Let's play. Okay. Hi. How are you, Doc?
I'm very well, Prince, and thank you for having me here.
I'm really excited. I have been looking forward to today's episode all day. How's your weekend so far?
Um, Today I did a long walk, about 3 hours. So when I came back, I was
Ooh.
quite tired. Glasgow is well, I'm in Glasgow now, so and we are in what they call the tier 4 of the coronavirus restrictions, and tier 4 is like the maximum. Unlike England, where they have a 3-tier system, in Scotland it's a 4-tier system, and Glasgow is in the peak of it. And so you can imagine restrictions. Non-essential shops are not opening, and in terms of household meetings and all of those are restricted. So, well, for the whole week I was working from home. So when I got the opportunity today to step out, I did do some work, and maybe I did too much. So yeah.
I can imagine. I also heard that the UK is implementing the vaccine already to some health workers and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's actually good news. Hopefully, we see how it goes, and then very soon we'll be out of the woods, and there'll be some level of normalcy, because I guess we're all getting used to the new normal, but there are still certain things technology doesn't provide, So while we acknowledge the opportunities that it's presented, there's been some challenging aspects as well, and it will be good to be back, to meet people in the person or in the flesh.
exactly, and that's for me. It's essential. I mean, there's nothing that can no technology can replace the human interactions and so forth. So welcome everyone to today. We have Dr. Shadrach Dare here in the house. We are going to talk about, as we always do every week, his journey basically on people who inspire. We try as much as possible to understand the journeys of our guests, and what are some of the lessons that we can glean as viewers and as listeners, and as well as a very important topic that is dear to his heart as well, on how to ensure equality and stuff like that. So we'll delve into the details. Welcome again to today's episode of People Who Inspire. So Dr. Shadrach Dare, can you tell me about, let's say, where did you grow up? Where were you born? How was it like growing up, basically? Did you grow up in Accra or Kumasi? I'm just curious. Are you a city boy or?
Well, I'm a Swedru boy, so.
Oh, really?
Kwakese, Patapa, yeah, I know. Recently, not as recent as I would like it to be, but a couple of years ago, I was somewhere in Europe, and then I met someone who asked me where I'm from, and I said, "Oh, I'm from Sweden." He said, "Oh, Patapa," So I was like, "Okay, I might as well claim him." So yeah, I grew up in Sweden, born, baptized, circumcised, schooled. In fact, the first time I left Sweden for any meaningful journey was when I was going to university. So I did my primary up to secondary. So I went to Sweden secondary school. So I was at perhaps if there was university in Swedro, I would have attended, perhaps an idea for someone, to start a university in Swedro so that we all, remain in Swedro. But yeah, I'm a typical Swedro boy.
Well, and so like, can you walk me through? So, how many siblings do you have, and what is your memory of growing up in Shredro? I know a lot of my friends, Luis Eduamo and all those guys also came from Shredro. So I know a bit of Shredro, but how was it like growing up? I mean, were you the typical bookworm, always studying, or how was it like really?
I mean, well, that's a good question, but I've not had to, think of these in more recent times. But I guess I grew up like most children, or most people in my generation at least. At the time, well, let me not go into the psycho aspect, but at the time we're not as exposed as people are today. So I mean, I went to primary school as every child, well, most children. After school, you'll be home, have some friends, play, or come around to play. But and went to JSS after school. And I think one of the key things then was that I wasn't a bookworm. No, I wasn't a bookworm back then. I wasn't a bookworm back then. And you just go to school, you close from school, you come home, play a bit, do some revision for like an hour or 30 minutes because there's not much to learn anyway. Or even what you were taught in class, you've not forgotten. So there's not really much to revise anyway. I need to mention, however, that my dad, now he's retired, so he was a primary school teacher. So if there was anything that was different from my growing up, it was the today when I reflect over it, I realize that I actually had private lessons, which at the time I wouldn't have considered it so. My father, being a primary school teacher, was teaching some other people's kids. After school, he would go in and do some private lessons for some kids, but he would not leave his son home and then go and teach other people's kids. So he would tag me along and then we will go. In fact, my dad taught in a government school, but I attended a private school, or international school, we used to call it back then. And that's how I know Luis Eduamo, because he was a year ahead of me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's a very respected senior. He was really brainy, and he still is. So, in fact, when my school, vacated, if my dad's school had not vacated, I'll go and continue there. So I did not enjoy all the liberties that children or my colleagues at the time may have enjoyed, because my dad was a primary school teacher. If he's going to teach other people's kids, I go along, because at the time he was teaching some friends who have become extremely close, like brothers. One of them was in the same class as I was, so he wouldn't go and teach somebody's kid for money and then leave his kid at home. So I tagged along and then go and sit in it, So I had those private classes. At the time, I did not consider it so. I considered my dad teaching me or helping with my homework. But today, when I reflect over it, I realize that may have actually contributed to what many would consider my own academic success. Because in terms of instructional time, I may have had more hours than I don't want to get into education theories and all of that, but in terms of instructional hours, I may have enjoyed more than my colleagues or those I grew up with at the time. And I guess if for those who grew up in my area, if there's any recollection, they'll recall that. Of course, if you're a teacher, they call it T or T, T's son. That this one is always, those days lashing your kids was legit. It was okay, every morning they'll hear me crying or something because I was struggling to understand long division, and so I guess that's, what I can say about my growing up. That it was basically. So you asked me about my brothers. Well, about my siblings. I've got 3 other brothers. I don't have. Okay. Well, I have cousins and all that, but we are 4 boys. In terms of the small family. But it was a big home. So my cousins were around, and I regarded them as sisters, and we all had the same surname. So unless you wanted to split hairs or ask whose father is who, you wouldn't know who is related to who. We're all brothers and sisters. So I guess that was basically it.
I think what really I've come to understand from the various episodes is that for each of my guests, at some point in their lives, there was that influence. So in this case, your father, who, I mean, at the time, like you said, you may not have considered it like private
No.
tuition or tutorials or whatever it is, but really that influence, and now, I mean, you are also in a similar profession, of course, at a higher level, but it's quite interesting to really kind of connect the dots later in life. You look back and you realize, so this is what my dad did at the time. So after you went to Swiss school, and from there, can you tell us what happened? So what at the time you were in Swiss school, what was, let's say, your aspiration? Did you always, I mean, had this passion to be a lecturer or a teacher?
Not really. I mean, I don't honestly know what I wanted to do. If there was any recollection of what I wanted to do at any point in high school, it would have been to be a petrochemical engineer, because I just liked how it sounded, until somebody told me. At the time, Ghana did not have oil, but I just thought the name was cool. This like 2005, 2006. So I thought, petrochemical engineer. It sounded sophisticated, so I thought, I'll do that. But I met someone who told me that, petroleum engineering, there's no petrol in Ghana or oil in Ghana unless you go and sell fuel at the filling station. And that's how, that dream left me, just as it came. So, in fact, I read science in high school, and I guess it was mostly, the trend at the time. In fact, when I was JSS2 going to JSS3 to prepare for BC, my dad actually wanted to repeat me because he felt I was too young, or But thanks to one teacher of mine, Mr. Ponsa, he's almost an uncle to me now. Mr. Ponsa said to my dad that, no, you are a teacher in a different school. We teach these kids and we know their potential. Shadrach is a lot better than, most of the kids who are going to write BEC. So why, hold him back? Let him go, let him write. And it was actually Mr. Ponsa who used his money to register me for BEC, because my dad would not register me for BEC because he thought I don't have been prepared enough, like it must be there, you are not there yet. So at the time we put a lot of emphasis on the BEC, you can't score, you must excel. You can't, exactly. So it was Mr. Amponsa who actually registered me for BEC against my dad's wishes, actually. So thanks to my those who taught me, and stood, vouched for me that I was able to do that. And in fact, Shadrach is good, so let him go and do science. There was that, perception that if you are good, you do science or business. If you're not so good, maybe you do some other courses. And if you are very bad, you do some other courses as well. Unless, of course, you were talented, then you were forced to do visual arts. I remember visual arts was talented. If your drawing was horrible, no way for you. So anyway, so that's how I ended up in this. In fact, I was supposed to do agric. That's the truth. I was supposed to do agric in Swiss school. I go to Swiss school. All my friends are in the science class. I don't know anybody in the agri class. What am I doing here? I just went join them in the science class, and that was it. Actually, in fact, that was it. So I just went to the science class without knowing. Yeah, you do science, or so did science. Struggled through sometimes, but yeah, I guess at the time I was not a bad student. No, I've never been a bad student, but I wasn't like an excellent student. I was good. I was good. Yeah. You get some B's, some A's, take one C, and then, you mix it up. You mix it up, and then, but yeah, it was like that. But, and I think it was also because at the time I wasn't so sure why I was in SS or what I was even looking for in SS. And unfortunately, while we had some really brilliant students in the class, it wasn't as I did not feel it was as competitive, at least on the academic front. Yeah, nobody was in competition with anyone. And I know today, competition seemed to not to be a very promoted thing, but I think among kids or among young people growing up, some sense of, healthy competition, even if not among themselves, but for each person to strive for some excellence has its place. We just go to class, they teach you something. Yeah, I understand. There was no sense of, and at the time, Chesco was not also in Brilla. So, in fact, I went to Chesco because I did not care about any of the big schools. I mean, you are in Australia, you go to Chesco. I mean, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Exactly. Yeah, so that was it. And yeah.
Mm.
Um,
And one thing that that strikes me is that, I mean, you did mention about this sense of competition, and I think, and I always tell this story. I remember very well, and this is why I know people like Luis Eduamoa, Tuanan, and all those guys.
oh, you know, Ananas.
Like, Tuanan and I have been in class since SS through to
Oh,
university. We're in the same class. Like
mm,
super, super, super brilliant. Like
mm,
extremely intelligent. And I think what, like, when I went to SS, like you rightly said, I probably had a different experience. So I remember very well during the orientation, we sat in the assembly hall, and then there's this guy who came to sit by me, and he had this Acula elective math, this big book. I'd never seen
yeah,
one before. I had no idea. I mean, I was going to do elective math as well, but I had no idea what it was. And so this guy opens the book and tells me, oh, he asked me a question. At the time, he was solving some questions on sets. And I
oh,
some square roots, funny. I was like,
mm,
what's this? I said, okay, so he's actually finished the syllabus, but he's just revising. I mean, this was orientation, first year. He said he's
yeah,
finished the entire SS syllabus with his personal teacher at home,
yeah,
and now he's just revising. And there was that question that was kind of bugging. So, I mean, it just got me thinking when you said,
mm,
and that really kind of got me. I'm like, okay, look, these guys are not here to play, so we
yeah,
need to. And from
yeah.
your perspective, being, I mean, in education, what can we do, for example, to ensure that balance between, kind of a fair competition, very healthy competition, and vis-a-vis this attitude of this laissez-faire attitude. I mean, whatever we get goes on.
I mean, I think teachers obviously have a big role to play,
Mm,
and parents equally, um, to to speak to kids, to know what exactly they're looking for, and then to let them understand that excelling academically has, it's not a very bad thing, that it has its place, because sometimes you need to push the kid a bit, almost stretch them a bit to see if they will break, of course,
mm,
not to overly force them, but to bring out to get the juice out of them, you need to squeeze them a bit, but in GSS or in primary school, when my dad was teaching me, there was that. So, I mean, there was no, then I would say I was perhaps a better student. But then we went to SS at the time. My dad wasn't teaching in SS, so he wasn't teaching me. And what was the point in going for extra classes? Yeah, what I've been taught in class, I remember, I understand, I can solve the questions, but there was no sense in going to search for extra. At least from my end in first year, or of course, this is my view. I did not speak for the whole class. I know some who were more hardworking, perhaps more hardworking than I was, but I still could not feel that sense of, and I was a day student for a while. So that may have also contributed to that. It was
okay.
until I think the third year that I went to boarding school. So then when I went for preps, I could see that, oh, okay, it looks like it's a different business here, but as a day student, I close, go home. By the time you get home, do some errands at home, and, I was in Sweden when I was going to school. In fact, my house, I just walk about, 10 minutes to get to 10 minutes is too much. Maybe 7 minutes to the junction to get a taxi to Square School, which is like another 7 minutes on a taxi, or maybe another 10 minutes on a taxi. So
Oh,
I could
okay.
actually walk to school and back home. So yeah, so that may have also, contributed to that. Of course, the boarders, those who were in the boarding school had more time to go for preps, and if you go for prep, you had nothing to do but to study. But some of us
Mm.
were home, so you could watch television or do other things. You have cousins to play with, There's enough to keep you
That's
busy. Yeah, go and pound fufu or go and do something. Or I didn't pound fufu anyway, but yeah. Uh, so
Yeah.
I guess in terms of this competition, parents need to speak to kids, that from an early start, to put in the work and allow them to study and encourage them to see the science in it. Because personally, I did not know what I was working so hard for. Yeah, there was nothing. I couldn't see anything I was working towards, and I mean, of course, still on the trajectory. So it all changed at some point. Oh, and when it changed, it really changed.
That's what really I'm interested in, because I mean, so you finished school, and so what happened afterwards? I'm interested in how you you became this extraordinary student in that journey. So after school, what was the next milestone?
Well, after high school, I mean, after SS, you go to university. Well, in fact, at the time when I finished, I passed the WASI. We were the first to write the WASI, so I passed the WASI. So applied to Legon, biological science, Champions League at the time. So applied for Champions League. In fact, I had one of my dad's friends even bought me a nursing training form, because we were just applying everything, But I did not apply to the nursing training because my friends at the time, none of them applied to nursing school. So why should I apply to nursing school? So in fact, that was the only reason why I did not apply. And that is why it comes into the main question, the main theme as well, that the company you keep also, influences, especially at that young age. There are some kids whose parents, or who are from a very strong home, who know what they're looking for. I'm the first of 4 boys. So in terms of, and in fact, most of my elder cousins would leave the country. They travel to Nigeria after a part of the family lives in Nigeria. So most of those who finished SS would leave to Nigeria to go and do their university there. But I decided to stay in Ghana for that. So I did not really have anyone in university who was guiding me that, oh, these are the courses you could do. So I was just applying to all of them. And my friends did not apply to nursing school. And we have similar grades. So why should I apply to nursing school? That was the perception. I applied to Legon. I got biological science. And then I applied to UCC, Cape Coast University. I applied for nursing there, and I got nursing there as well. So at the time, I mean, you've got biological science. Go and do the Champions League 1 year. For those who don't know, at the time you had to do biological science for a year. And based on your performance, you could be admitted into medical school, or you could choose any of the allied sciences, or any of the, other sciences, whether, fisheries, aquatic sciences, oceanography, or medicine or dentistry. But, so given these 2 options, you have nursing on one hand, and then you have possible medicine, because you go to do biological science with the hope of getting into medical school. At the time, I wasn't so confident as I may be today, So given the 2 options, spoke to a few people. And one guy, I've not asked him, so I can't mention his name, but he persuaded me, he really, well, I could see wisdom in what he was saying. Told me about degree nursing, because he told me it's a no-brainer. Why would you go, do Champions League for a year and possibly not get into medical school, possibly, and then, you have degree nursing on one hand. He told me, the differences between the nursing school and the degree nursing, and it seemed attractive, it seemed cool. So I took my chances and went into nursing school at UCC, and so that's how come I ended up doing nursing. And it was in UCC was the first time I left Swedro, for any meaningful. And so I go to this class, I go to class, and there are students from Louis, students from Boche, there was actually
a whole squad,
and surprisingly, at the time we interacted, we asked them which school did they go to. They say St. Louis. I'm like, which school is that? Like, it's in Kumasi. I've never heard of it. And they asked me, which school did you go to? I was saying first school, and they're like, which school is that? I'm like, I have no idea which schools you guys are attending. So I realized that I was in a different world altogether. There were students from, and sometimes people pass some very funny comments, thinking that because you came from Swedro or came from Swed School, you may be, a brilliant student, like that,
Exactly.
And that sometimes affected you negatively, but sometimes also pushed you, to prove a point. So that was how, I started to get some sense of, working hard, because there are all these students who've come from all over the place. But one thing that may have actually helped me a lot before I entered UCC was, before I entered UCC, and Mr. Texan, he's a lecturer or a teacher at Swesco now. Actually, he had just completed UCC, and he told me how the university system works. So before I went to UCC, I had my orientation from Mr. Texan, for like an
Oh,
hour
okay.
session. He had taught me the GPA system, how it works, why UCC is called University of Constant Confusion, how it's called, why it's a difficult place, how you can't mess your grades up from the onset, sharing his own experiences because he did not put a lot of effort into the first year. And by the time he realized he was paying the debt for, unlike University of Ghana at the time, I'm not sure what they do now. First year did not used to count. Second year counted only 20% of the total GPA. Third year was 20%. And I think the final year was, third year was 40%. And the last year was also 40%. But in UCC, from the onset
From
was
day one.
100%. From day one was 100%. So if you messed up your first year, your subsequent GPAs will be paying the debt of the.
Exactly.
So, no, Mr. Texan, I owe him that. He taught me how the quiz system in UCC works and how some of the quizzes were at 5 a.m. He taught me how timetables could change, at the dying hour. In fact, I understood, and he told me not to take orientation for granted. That's how I would understand the system. So before I entered UCC, I was sharp on those things. And one thing he said to me was that the university is an equal grounds. No matter where students have come from, whether they've come from because you are here in Fantipin or at Dissidel or Augustins I'm biased, I'm Central Region, so I know the Central Region schools. Or whatever the school they've come from, nobody has done nursing before. Nobody did nursing at Infantipin or in Louis or anywhere. It's an equal ground. So that is the point for us to prove ourselves. And I think that is the key thing that has stuck with me since, that let the grounds be equal and give people the opportunity to prove themselves. First year, my grades were, like I said, I've not been a bad student. It was okay. It was good. There were people who scored way better grades than I. Perhaps there are a lot of people who scored way better grades than I did in the first year. But after that, when I'll come to a story there, that was when I realized that these are equal. Yeah, so I guess that was how I entered UCC. Why I entered UCC to do nursing to begin with, and then how I entered it in the first place as well.
I think one theme is resonating with me, and that is the importance of either peer-to-peer mentoring or like mentoring in general. Because like yourself, I did not have any, let's say, mentor who said, okay, look, before you went to, let's say, senior high school, okay, these are some of the things you should look out for in a boarding school, XYZ, nothing. And like yourself, I went to SS as an underdog. Like I was the first person for my GSS to go to infant school, and the only person that got there for that year as well. So like rightly so I had no senior to look up to, nothing. So I think this for me presents a gap for people like you and I to really delve deeper into how can we help and support young people with mentoring, with some piece of information. Mr. Texan did exactly that for you for that at that stage. So I think that really it's kind of resonating. And so after first year, I'm interested in how I know you talk to your class at the end of the day, but what was the nudge? What was the nudge? What really kind of pushed you to that point where you said, look, I need to deliver to my optimum best? Was there an incident? Was there someone? What was it?
It was poverty.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because, and one thing with growing up in Shadrach was that in the area that I grew up, it was fairly equal. Nobody was too rich. Nobody was too poor. Mr. Hakim has a bicycle. My dad doesn't have a bicycle, but I have a bike. So, maybe your father has a car, but your father picks us up when you're going to school. So we couldn't even see the difference. You are no better than me. Your father has the car, but we all drive the car to go to school. In fact, there was these guys. Some people had cars in the area which would pick you up, but we didn't like the private car because there was this man who had a bone shaker. We called it a bone shaker at the time. It was actually a Kia. And he would take his kids to school in the Kia, but we all enjoyed being at the back of the Kia and then making the noise. So it was fairly, everyone was, sort of okay. The kids played together, we played football together. We're all not too bad, academically. Around the same thing. But in university, I would notice the inequality. I had a very good friend who is from a very influential home. The dad would come to visit her, and then on seeing me, as a gift or something, was more than my pocket money I was given. I was like, how come, your dad is even able to just dash me, what was more than my pocket money? And, with all respect to my parents as well, to provide for me within their means, I needed to inform my dad, of my whatever I needed, maybe a month or so. I can't just go that I need, 5 days tomorrow and then it's provided. No, you need to, before the year begins, everyone brings their budget, what you need for the year. And then if my dad would go for a loan, so in fact, I did not take a student loan because my dad was the one taking the loan. So he did not see the sense in granting me, another loan to go for another loan. So if he's going for the loan, then it covers all our expenses. So after the loan for the year is taken, you don't go back, that, oh, I forgot this. No, you have to think through the year. So, but in university, I would notice this inequality. I would notice that some are a lot better off than others. And I began asking questions. What does your father do? How did he get there? I actually had an opportunity a nursing school also offered opportunity because at the end of every semester, we went for placements. And for those who were not nurses, we go for attachments. I had a mentor, a formal mentor, who would tell me that, in fact, my first clinical placement, I did it in Swedro. He told me that, don't come to Swedro again. So for my subsequent placements, I would go to Accra, I would go to Koforidia, I would spend it in different places, and sometimes had opportunities. I would stay with friends or my roommates, in their home for 1 month, before coming back to Swedro. And then by interacting with their parents or interacting with kids in the neighborhood, I remember speaking to one kid in Ashoman Estate in Accra who said he wanted to be a chartered accountant. At the time, I knew who a chartered accountant was. I was surprised that at your age, why do you want to be a chartered accountant? What is a chartered accountant? And he said, oh, my dad is a chartered accountant, so I know what he does. I was like, that's where I realized that, so when I speak to their parents, they say hard work, parents' mantra, hard work. They studied hard, they worked hard. So that was what was in my mind, hard work pays. Hard work pays. I'm also a Christian, so I used to go to church. Well, I still go to church. It was during one service, one afternoon, one midweek service that I think it was, I can't remember whether it was Carl or Dumja, who was the GAMSU president at the time, who delivered a sermon about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being the Daniel chapter 1. They were 10 times better than astrologers or magicians in the kingdom of Babylon. And that sermon, that was the sermon that changed my life, actually. Wow. I wondered that my name is Shadrach, and I'm not a bad student, and I'm not excellent. I was good. And I thought that if Shadrach was 10 times better than astrologers and 10 times better than everyone in the whole of Babylon, I could be 10 times better than anyone in the whole of Cape Coast or in the whole of UCC or the whole of my class or something. And from that day, coupled with all these, I guess it had all built up, these conversations had all built up. And at the time, I was furious that, about my situation in Sweden, when I noticed that, no, in fact, it was in university I realized that I was poor. That when I noticed that, no, this is not how other people live their lives. Exactly. They don't secure loans at the beginning of the year to pay for things. They don't need to be given a month notice before they pay for things. Something must change. And I appreciated the opportunity. My dad used to tell me this. Well, he was a teacher, so at the time, this distance had started. So he was doing his distance at Winneba to get his degree. So he told me that, Shadrach, this is the best I can give you. I'm ending my career with a degree. You are starting yours with a first degree. You have no excuse to fail or to say that my dad did not take care of me or anything. You are not taking a student's loan. I am paying your fee. So, and that, all of these, came together, and I realized that. So that was one of the first moments I realized that I was in charge of my life, and whatever I make of my university depended on me. I started going to it's no shame, but any of my classmates will tell you, Shadrach worked harder than anybody in the class. I've got colleagues who are doing way better and are doing fantastic, but they would tell you that I worked a lot harder than anybody in my class. I mean, I spent time in the. Initially, it was a bit of discipline, having to go to the library every evening, having to study, But after a while, it became enjoyable, to the point that those handouts lecturers gave, those photocopies, I couldn't read it because when I read it, it felt empty. It felt too light. So I would read the Raymond Chan. You know you may know Raymond Chan. I'll read the foreign text. I enjoy the stories. While my colleagues or other people will not enjoy those big books because it's too winding. In fact, I enjoy the stories they told. So today I can't read a lot of there are not many Ghanaian authors I can read because it's too the writing is not sweet. But when I read those foreign the writing was enjoyable. I would learn new words. I would see the pictures. When I was reading about whether the circulatory system, I could see the capillaries. I could see it. Unlike the A4 photocopied. Well, I couldn't afford those photocopies as well, so there was no motivation for me to go and buy them anyway. So whatever lecturer will say that you have to buy the book, so buy my pamphlet. I wouldn't buy them. I didn't buy them. Well, by the nursing school, not many lecturers did that to us. We were not forced to buy pamphlets. So, and that also is one of the things that could actually increase this inequality, even at university, where lecturers are selling pamphlets. We've come from different backgrounds. Not everyone can afford to buy them. So that if you make education expensive, well, it's not a great time to be talking about free SHS. So I'll try not to get too much into that.
Shadrach, I want to dwell on this inequality topic because I mean that's the import of today's discussion anyway. So. And this is important because you did mention something here, and I experienced the same thing where immediately you leave your comfort zone to another place, then you begin to see that life, has different perspectives. People have, let's say, different needs. People have different things they're struggling with. For example, when I first went to, it was in the SS, for example, that I think it was the first time I'd even seen cornflakes and stuff like that. Like not even.
Where did you come from, by the way? Where did you come from?
I came from Accra anyway, but I mean,
really?
Yes. I grew up in Accra, and I went to. I grew up in a compound house. My mom was a policewoman, so I grew up in a police barrack. But I realized that the world was different when I went to that was the first time I had left home and been in the boarding house. And I could tell. I remember when we were first doing introductions, even in class, my school name, no one had ever heard it. They were laughing, people from Morningstar, Engelbert, and stuff like that. Some guys were telling me their school fees they were paying in dollars. I was like, really? I was shocked, and stuff like that. So I think you made a very important point that until we leave our comfort zone, we don't really appreciate, this topic of inequality. And here, you rightly mentioned that you began to experience this inequality. You realize that there are people who did not have to even think of what they have to eat, so they can just go and study. I remember growing up, there were times, where I had to ration my studying because if you study too hard, you get hungry, and stuff like that. So my question here is, from your point of view, you've experienced it, you've seen it. At that stage, what can be done? I think about it and I'm like, okay, look, in society, there would always be the rich, there would always be the middle class, there would always be the poor. But when it comes to certain social amenities, right, there has to be that equal opportunity to first access it and and afford it as well. But from your point of view, and here I want to stick to, let's say, education, right? What can be done to really, smooth out or to level up this inequality that we see, in terms of even books, like you rightly said, handouts? These are very, they seem insignificant, but they are. Myself, there are many times I could not afford those handouts, even during my master's, for example. So what can be done? I've thought about this, but you probably have better, perspectives than I do.
I mean, I'll first start from my own experience. I mean, so after university, I mean, I graduated top of my class, also by grace. So after university, I won a Commonwealth scholarship to study in the UK. So scholarships, I would definitely advocate for that. And I remember it was actually when I was still in university. By then, my mind had opened, and those were the days of Miles Monroe. And I was listening to Monroe,
Oh
listening
man,
to,
me too.
when Monroe was in Ghana, I actually went to see him.
Oh really?
Yeah, oh yeah, I was, yeah, I was a different person. Like, I he came to UCC actually, and I went to see Monroe, and in fact, it was Miles Monroe at the time. I wanted to. So, if your father is a teacher, he never wants you to be a teacher. So the only grounds on which my dad would agree that I would be in academia was to be a lecturer. So I wanted to be a lecturer in UCC. It was Miles Monroe at his talk in UCC who pushed that. Why do we consider the lion the king of the jungle? Is it the biggest? Then you've not heard of an elephant. Is it the wisest? Then you should go to the ant or even the snake or even a monkey. A monkey is even smarter than a lion. So the lion is not the strongest. Buffaloes are stronger than lions. Yet the lion roars and they all are silent. Why? Because the lion has that mindset. The Jata mindset. I mean, it sees anything and it sees it's a food. It's something I'm devouring. So the lion says that if I can't do this, nobody else can. If not me, then who? He must devour it. And Miles Monroe said one thing: you want to be a lecturer in UCC? Why not a lecturer in Oxford or say in Cambridge? Or why? And that I was like, oh, okay, I can actually be there. In fact, you want to do a master's in UCC? Why not a master's in the best universities? Why not a master's abroad? So that was where all these things. So I started considering. In fact, back in university, people were buggering. I never thought of it, and I should say this with care. Unlike those who went to Legon, I can imagine that the diversity in Legon would be more than the one in UCC. So, and the opportunities in Legon would also be more than the opportunities in UCC. So that in terms of buggering or I thought it was something for the affluent, but I hear in Legon there were even hustlers who could bugger for a year. It never crossed my mind because I knew it was out of reach. But then when Miles Monroe did that, I started investigating scholarship opportunities. And in fact, there was a talk by some guys who had studied on the Gates Cambridge scholarship. Lamwell was one of the guys' names. In fact, there were tech guys who had come to tell us about Cambridge and tell us about, about scholarships. And they mentioned Commonwealth scholarships. So I investigated it and realized that, you need to excel and all of that. And they taught us how to write the essays. And by the time before I actually finished my undergrad, I knew what I wanted to do afterwards. So while people were searching at a point, I wasn't looking for first class. In fact, by third year, I knew that even if I had B's throughout, I'll still make a first class. So a first class was a first class. And thanks to Mr. Texan as well. At the time, that's what we call buffer GPA. At that stage, it would take a lot for the GPA to come down. Yeah, so I was in a comfortable place. But I was still pressing on because I knew that people would wonder. My colleagues, some of them would wonder, Shadrach, you're already making a first class. Why are you still working hard? I was like, my target is not first. I wasn't even caring about best students or anything. I wanted to secure, some courses. I wasn't messing the A's up, because I wanted to do public health. That's another story on its own. So anyway, so for courses like epidemiology, public health, those ones I wanted to do at the master's level, I wasn't messing them up. I made sure that I was hitting on, right on. So anyway, so scholarships is one of the things I would strongly advocate. I remember when I got admission I studied at Glasgow University. And in fact, it's one of the saddest moments as well for me. I got the admission. Fees at the time was £15,750. I remember clearly. Told my dad that I've got admission to Glasgow University. And this is the letter. He asked me that how much is the fees. I told him, and then he gave me his pay slip. Oh, that was an insult.
Wow. He
asked me that it was you take a loan at the beginning of the year and then you spread it throughout the year. So he asked me to calculate how we can pay for the fees and the flight and the living allowance and everything. He was willing to support, honestly.
Wow.
When I did the calculation, it would take like maybe 72 years, if we did not spend a dime of that salary, if we did not. So it was impossible. Oh, that was an insult. It was that, it just stuck on my mind that you and you could say a father who wanted to help the son, but you realize that, in fact, I went to a bank, HSB or HB. What's the name of that bank? It's now Republic Bank, HFC Bank. In fact, I spoke to the credit manager at the time that I'm going to study my masters. When I come back, I'll come and work and pay. He told me, Shadrach, I can see where you're coming from, but there is no bank in this country which will give, because you don't have a land, you don't have any. This is important because it will lead into another point I want to make. He told that you won't get the loan, so don't waste your time. I told him that I have not taken SNIT loan before. So is it possible to accumulate the SNIT loan? And then I was working out every strategy. He was like, no, nobody will give you that money to leave the country. Really? No, nobody will give you that money. Anyway, thank God, Commonwealth Scholarship came through. It was fully funded. It paid for my I was paid stipend. I was paid. My flight was, in fact, the visa application was even paid.
Wow.
In fact, it was one of my breakthroughs. So anyway, so scholarships, I would definitely advocate. These scholarships are good, so that you can see why, if scholarships are reserved for those from affluent homes, it does disservice to a lot of people. Like, it does a lot of. I can't overemphasize that scholarships need to be fair. However, scholarships are often competitive, so they're reserved for those who may be top of class, or who can write. Because you don't need a first class to get a scholarship. There are some who go upper. I actually know somebody who got a second class lower who won a Commonwealth scholarship because she wrote convincingly. She was a female who did physics. She was the only female in her class. So it depends on how you can sell yourself. So for those listening, you don't need to only make a first class. It depends on how you tell your story. Where have you come from? And I guess this what this platform is also about. Where have you come from, and where are you going, and how will the Commonwealth Scholarship, or how will the scholarship help you reach there? And I guess that was the story I told in my own case, of how these things. Anyway, so that aside, so scholarships, definitely is one of the other ways. But for those who make upper, because we all can't make a first class and we all can't be top of our class. So what happens to the rest? And I think that's where government policies has a crucial role to play. I'm a strong advocate for student loans. I think the banks, and I'm not a very strong person when it comes to economics because I did public health. Well, from nursing school, I did public health at the master's level, and then I taught my class again. # bragging rights. Anyway, it's a whole different story on its own. I mean, studying. I think diversity in itself, opens your eyes. When you meet other people, your eyes are opened anyway. So that I think that I can think of a system which can absolutely work, whereby the banks, if governments can, support banks to give relevant student loans that support students, not the SNIT 200 cities, 300, I don't know what they take now, which can't pay for anything. I mean, you give relevant loans to students so that they can actually see themselves through university. And afterwards, you tie them so that when it comes to taxing, or, whether they are working in the private sector or in the public sector, you are able to take the loans from them over a period at an interest. And I can see how this works for the banks. It will just be like a mortgage, or be like, it's a loan they will pay after university. Oh, Shadrach, what if they leave the country? Of course, if you've taken a loan, we can build that system. You can't leave the country if you've not paid that loan, or there will be guarantors. People who guarantee this loan for you, who will pay? Oh, Shadrach, what if they die? Of course, if people die, then that's bad debt. You can get the interest from other people to make up these things when somebody takes it. And I can see why I'm saying what if they die, because it shouldn't be a system whereby somebody must have a land or an asset before they can guarantee these things. Government must be able to provide that security, so that if it will only be for those who think they need these facilities, who would go for them and can see them through university and can get meaningful jobs afterwards. Because I get sad when somebody has scored 8 A's or 7 A's and they need money to go to study medicine or something. No, we need these doctors. So provide a loan for them to study it, and then afterwards, when they are working, you take the money at source. They pay maybe first year will not, you don't start charging them so that they can settle or something like that. But these details, the economists and the talents in Ghana can work on these things. I don't know much about it, but I can see how this can work, so that it is possible that we have, WAEC will provide a list of students who have passed SS in a particular year, and then all these students are aware that if you have passed and you want to go to university or go to a polytechnic or go to nursing training, there will be loan for you to study. And in fact, a government feels like, we can't sponsor people who study business administration, because we all know that business administration is not a good course. Anyway, that's a joke anyway. But if the government feels, we can't sponsor everyone, every course because the money is not enough, at least you can. And that was the reason for those nursing allowances anyway. But now people go to university to study. Somebody has scored 8 A's or 7 A's, wants to study nursing. Must they go to the nursing training if they qualify for university nursing, so that university nurses don't have access to these loans the nursing training people have? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. So you can support those who are studying those crucial courses the economy needs, or you can guarantee them jobs, and afterwards they pay. And I mean, I think that would be one of the ways to create an equal platform, so that it must not take whether Gen.com or OMG Ghana or I don't know, somebody trending for them before somebody will see that, he's got 8 A's and he's from a poor home, so he needs support. There are a lot more we don't know about. There are a lot more we don't know about. So student loans.
I think that I saw and I'm happy you made this point, because it's almost as though if your story does not go viral, right, it means the system cannot support you. I mean, for every, like you rightly said, for every one of such stories, there are hundreds of other people, right, who either are in a village somewhere, no one knows their story, like for example, if there's not a platform for such people, if someone does not identify their story and writes about them, no one is going to know about them. And I think this is crucial, and this it's a wake-up call, especially for the finance industry in Ghana. I think they are very traditional, where they operate a very solid loan system, where you go for a loan, you should have a collateral and a house, a land, and so forth. So that is what the traditional methods of finance they are used to. But I've seen very little innovation when it comes to financing certain other aspects of the economy, like education. It's a huge, look, every year you are sure of getting constant stream of students coming either from JHS to SHS, or from SHS to the university, or to the various training colleges and stuff. This is like constant, right? So it's about time, I think, the finance industry thinks about this constant stream of income. All you have to do is, like you rightly said, think about an innovative way to support people. I know people who were very good students, but because of the economic conditions during the university, were not performing, and people thought, what happened to them? Because, like you said, I knew people, for example, who would come to school and did not know where to sleep, like hostel, for example. So they came all the way, KNUST, they arrived, but they had to pitch, sometimes and stuff. And all these affects the quality of education experience. So, you've mentioned about scholarships, and I want you, do you know, if you can, just asking, if you can, apart from Commonwealth scholarship, for our viewers who might be watching, people thinking about their masters or a PhD, you also mentioned about the Gates Cambridge scholarship as well. Are there any, is there a website or any other scholarships maybe you can share, for example, to people watching?
I don't want to recommend a particular website, but just Google, and it depends on how you search. If you're a woman, you can search for scholarship for girls in Africa, scholarships for, and you must not actually study in UK. I know a lot about the UK scholarship, so Commonwealth, Chevening, Gates, Cambridge, and some universities have their own schemes. So go through Google. In fact, a friend of mine said that somebody actually messaged him on WhatsApp and asked that, how can I search for this? And then he messaged him saying that the internet is not for WhatsApping only; it's also for searching. So the internet you have to be WhatsApping to ask me something. Go on the Google and use that same internet to search for what you need to search for. So just Google, a lot of options would come up. You can study a master's in Kenya. The diversity, what you would learn, you'll be surprised, and I strongly recommend that.
And thanks for sharing that, exactly that. So if you're watching this, I mean, one of the key things about exposure, like you rightly said, that when you get the exposure, it kind of gives you another level of reality. It presents you a different level of opportunity and reality, and you begin to see things from a different perspective. So if you're watching and you are considering a scholarship, I mean, like Doc said, you have to put yourself out there, search for them. They're there. I mean, Gates, Cambridge Scholarship, Chevening, and Commonwealth, what have you. Search for them, right? And then tell your story. You mentioned something very important, that in the application process of a scholarship, it's really about the narrative, right? So like you said, what are your experiences? Where do you expect to get to, and how can the scholarship, for example, help you get to where you want to get to, and stuff like that. So my last bit of 2 questions is, so from topping your class, you gained the Commonwealth Scholarship, you did your master's, again you topped your class. What was the reason for a PhD? I mean, the people I talk to normally would be like, Charlie, the different levels it's for some sharks, and like another 4 years or 3 years or whatever of your life, So what was it that really got you into PhD, and what is your PhD focused on?
I mean, after my master's, I came back to UCC, where I was working as a research assistant, or still trying to get to be an assistant lecturer. So in academia, PhD is desirable. So I guess in that sense, I did not have. It was necessary for my career to get a PhD for that reason. And I won another Commonwealth scholarship as well. So Commonwealth scholarships are for both masters and for PhDs. So you can look into that as well. But I guess, for unlike other fields, like, I don't know, engineering, or for business or finance, whereby, if you want to go corporate, maybe a PhD may not be necessary or something. When it comes to health, the more you know, the better. So that a PhD is desirable in the health field in general. But PhD is research driven. I mean, PhD is research. So if you want to know more of something, or if you want to make a difference, or help change the world through research, or then a PhD is for you. Of course, there are some who go on to do a PhD and afterwards apply the analytical skills they gain in corporate world. So that is equally fine. But PhD, I know people who do 2 masters, 3 masters, and I have a friend who says, "Oh, I have 3 masters, so it's equivalent to PhD." I'm like, no. 3 PhDs, it's not equivalent to a PhD, So a PhD is identifying a topic you are passionate about. You want to investigate, know more. So for my PhD, in layman terms, I wanted to understand why babies in Ghana die within 1 month after they are born, because a lot more we know that if a baby is born, the first 1 month is the most crucial period. If the baby survives the first 1 month, in fact, if the baby survives the first 1 week, they have a higher chance of surviving than those who die, of course. And so if they survive the first 1 month, they have a higher chance. You might have heard the word under 5 mortality, because if a baby survives after 5 years, chances of growing older is higher. But even among the under 5 mortality, a lot more are dying in the first month. So I did not want to look at under 5 mortality. I wanted to look at that specific 1 month. Why are they dying in that 1 month? And the recommendations help, support midwives or nurses or doctors or mothers to be able to help their babies survive, beyond the 1 month, and hopefully. So it's still about the inequality opportunities. I believe that a baby born in Swedru and a baby born in Accra, a baby born in Tongo in the Upper East region, a baby born in Navrongo should not die earlier than a baby born in Accra because of geography. We should give children equal opportunity first to life, and then educate and all the opportunities that life presents. So my interest in inequality goes beyond even education, but even health, because you first need life before you can pursue the opportunities that life has to present.
And then that's actually going to be my last question on the inequality in health. So I mean, before this meeting, we did talk about that. So I mean, this is very important also. I spoke with some people some time back, and one distant relative that I knew some time back lost their wife when I think she was in labor. She and I also understood that a lot of the women who go to the hospital to deliver they have a very low probability of coming back alive, even either with a baby or without the baby, or whatever the case may be. But I also realized that in my interactions that it also depends on which hospital the person goes to deliver. So imagine that, okay, hospital A is noted to have a low mortality rate. It means that demand is high. Just demand and supply. So demand is high, right? So everyone wants to go to the hospital. But we all know infrastructure is limited, right? Resources are limited. So if there are fixed number of beds, they can't, take in more than the number of beds and so forth. So from your research, in terms of the under 1 month mortality and all the inequality topics within the health industry, apart from the government's role, which is for me the most important role, what can citizens do? What can corporate organizations do? I want to look at it from that aspect as well. I know the government is usually the first thing, but what can we do as citizens to help improve the health inequality that exists?
Good question. I mean, it depends on what aspects you look at, and I guess that's the purpose of research. Because the recommendations for child mortality, for reducing child mortality, there may be some which will cut across, like infrastructure or all those things, but those for maternal mortality will be different. But I think when it comes to maternal mortality, they talk about the 3 delays: the delay in getting to the hospital, the delay in receiving care, and the delay in some. There are 3 delays. So trying to cut through these ones. When it comes to the role of citizens, in our place, culture plays a big role as well. And in my experience, actually, my own research, whereby there were mothers who would prefer to deliver at home, because if a mother delivered in the hospital, they were considered weak. Because
really?
Oh yeah, you live in Accra. You've lived in Accra for too long. Because and you would understand if I explain. Mothers have this perception about cesarean section, whereby the operation ones, they want to push their baby. But there are reasons why some mothers cannot push. It's not their fault. There are health complications for which God has given us cesarean section for a reason. But there are those who go like, no, I pushed and some actually spite other mothers that, as for me, I pushed my own baby. Did you even suffer in as if suffering in childbirth is it's glorious or something.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think
so there are these cultural elements that play a role in where mothers receive care, and that is what we can do on our own to stop that. We should listen to healthcare providers' advice, and then mothers. I mean, you don't want to hear all the stories. Mothers smuggling concoctions so that their children will deliver sooner, or family members, let me not say mothers, family members smuggling concoctions, because if you spend a shorter time in labor, it's considered a good thing. Once she went in, she delivered. And so these concoctions sometimes stimulate the uterus too much that the baby, because it's for every stimulation, it affects the baby, and sometimes it overstimulates and the baby cannot breathe. So the baby is asphyxiated by the time they come out. Because you're asking for what citizens can do, I don't want to get into. There should be equipment to care for an asphyxiated baby. So for that, I can't blame the mother that she was supposed to come with her own. That is not for individuals, but individuals must listen to government to healthcare providers' advice and then they know what they are doing. And private citizens, those who can support. I don't know much about how the economics of it would work, but from where I stand, well, I say that I do not know much about it with humility, but I can see how private parties and government can work together. You guys in app development, there should be apps that can help a mother easily transmit information that I'm in labor. They click on their phone. Everybody has a phone in Ghana now. They click on their phone, I'm in labor. It leads to the ambulance system. The hospital is aware. The delays can be cut. I mean, those of us in health cannot solve this by ourselves. We need the engineers. The roads must be fixed. We need community systems must work. Communities which can have cars, to transport. I mean, Prince, we all have a role to play. To make Ghana a better place, I guess.
I mean, I fully agree, because I mean, from it's and that's the thing with health. It's not just one entity. It's really a whole value chain of players and stakeholders who, like you rightly said, if the roads are good, but there's no ambulances, then what's the point? If the ambulances and the roads are not good, then what's the point? And all that. So everything must must come together to make it work. And I think for me, one of the lessons I've learned from our conversations.
Let me chip in this actually. So 3 years ago, I'm part of a Dr. Nana Grower Foundation. We built a clinic, a maternity center in Tongo in the Upper East region, and it was a lot of fundraising on Facebook and everywhere. So I think citizens can also do some of these things to help. However, I would caution that these things, you don't want to build a hospital in a place where nobody assesses them or needs them. Do it in consultation with the community. What are their needs? Because sometimes what they need is actually maybe fixing a road or getting water rather than building a fancy, place. But citizens can play this role. And thank you to everyone who has been supporting, Dr. Nana. And of course, they can search us online. Dr. Nana Grower. It's simply known as Dr. Nana Foundation. It's registered here in Scotland, and now that we've built the maternity center, we continue to support these local communities, especially in the north, to improve access to health facilities. Just about 2 days ago, we donated 2 motorbikes to community health workers in the area so that they are able to take vaccines or deliver care to those in the remote areas. Because until we build a fancy hospital, what do? There can be motorbikes which can reach, because those places, you need to a 4-wheel drive. Even sometimes where I've driven in those places, your 4-wheel drive cannot get there. So people who do these things can also be supported, and there's a lot we all can do.
And how do people contribute to the initiative, the Dr. Nana Foundation initiative? Is there any let's say a website or page, Facebook page that they can visit to contribute?
We do have a Facebook page known as Dr. Nana, Dr. Nana Grower Health Dr. Nana Health Initiative, but they can simply search Dr. Nana and it will come up either on Google or on Facebook. And once you send a message, or even send me a message, I'm tagged in Princess status. So if you send me a message, I'll pick it up. And then if you want to just partner with us, or you think there's an area of need or something we can do together, happy to to discuss over tea or over the phone or something. So
Thank you very much. I think time is up now, and I know you're a busy man. I wouldn't want to take too much of your time, but what would be your final words to our viewers, people who are watching and listening, in regarding the topic of inequality and the general, let's say, discussions we've had today around even scholarships or exploring opportunities and going out of your comfort zone? What would be your final words for us?
I guess is to believe and then keep pushing. Do your best. There's no place where they don't need excellence. If you can get a first class, don't let anyone talk you into getting an upper. There was this funny thing where people said, "Oh, you're learning too much. Why you don't be the president?" But what's wrong with being the president? Like, what's wrong with that? And mentoring, support I guess inequality, what we can do, let's help each other. If you find somebody, in your community who needs a push, it could be a conversation. In fact, like I said, I knew of Common Scholar because somebody told me about it. And that was, what changed my life. So if you have the information, don't hold on it, because, share it, share it, and let's lift each other up. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate the conversation. And I'm very sure that we'll try and maybe in future have a very in-depth conversation, especially on your research interest areas. I'm quite interested in that area as well. So thank you so much, and for everyone who tuned in, I really appreciate you for joining People Who Inspire. And next week we would come your way with another episode. Thank you, and have a nice weekend. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you, Prince. Thank you, Prince.
Okay, bye-bye.